Okay. Good. So really, we're just here to ask questions about tomatoes. And Steve was just telling us about what he's up to. Before you guys got logged on too, he was telling us about how they're going to get their tomatoes in on Friday.
Or at least that's the plan. I mean, we're probably 2 weeks later than we normally would be, but the field, there was no way we could even get into the field till the middle of April. I mean, it was just, I had ducks residing in one of my fields this spring. So, but I also had a phenomenal cover crop, the best cover crop I've ever grown there. I mean, the fava beans were 4 feet high, and the oats and the vetch thick, and clover. So that was the positive with all that rain we had.
Yeah.
But you know, you just can't work ground when it's too wet. It's just, you just have to wait. And so we're still okay. It just means we push it up a little bit, push it back a little of the season. So, and I don't know how much you know about, well, Seed Revolution now, my little company. I'm actually, just to let you know, we're actually going to be, well, my family and I, we're moving to Portland, Oregon, or near Portland. But I'm still, in fact, my wife, my daughter, my son-in-law, and my granddaughter are all up there now. And I've been kind of going back and forth. But I'm trying to keep it going beyond this year. This year, I'm obviously here, but we've got some other local farmers that could be interested in managing the business, or at least I would help them with it. Because I looked, and we still have, Seed Revolution now has quite a bit of inventory that you know, would just be a crime to see it just disappear. And so I've been, you know, mostly I sell seed to garden seed companies. I think High Mowing is a good customer, and Hudson Valley, San Diego Seed in California, and also Siskiyou Seed in Oregon, all good customers, and then a few others here and there. So there's people that want this seed. In fact, I mean, we've been kind of focusing on seed that's got commercial viability, particularly the tomato seed. I mean, we really did it with the intention of, I mean, I love the backyard gardeners grow it, but it's really, these are really varieties that a commercial grower would really want to have. And because of what we've done in our breeding work, and we can kind of talk about that stuff. But
yeah, because I remember you talking about the breeding, that you guys were specifically trying to help with the yields and the flavors for smaller, like, organic farmers.
Right. I mean, a large grower could also do it. I sent, the last 2 years, I've sent a lot of my varieties to Johnny's in Maine, and they're notoriously picky about what they'll put in their catalog, and they really liked several of the things that we offered them.
Which ones are they carrying?
They're not carrying any yet. You know, they're very conservative about, you know, taking on new stuff, and they do 2 years of trialing.
Oh,
so
wow.
This is the second year on these.
And
so we'll see if they go for it. But basically, when we say commercial traits, usually when you think of commercial traits, it's everything except flavor. I mean, they do. I mean, some of the commercial varieties do actually have good, decent flavor, but it's the heirlooms that, you know, really are outstanding. Some heirlooms anyway. And but the commercial traits would be, of course, yield and storage ability, you know, a shelf life, and how long they can hold in a box. More determinate growth habit. So you don't have to trellis them, or at least minimum trellising.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
actually, can I ask you a question right now about that? That's one
Yes,
of my big questions
please.
is about, because I'm growing right now your chocolate silk, American Idol, Magic Bullet, and Pineapple Rose.
Hmm.
And, they're this tall right now, so I haven't done anything.
Okay.
Should I be building trellises for them? Should I be making cordons? Should I just leave them to sprawl on the ground?
Well,
What's the best way
okay.
to do those guys?
Some of them, and we can go through that, like, for example, chocolate silk
Mhm.
is a determinate tomato. Does everybody know what a determinate is versus indeterminate? I mean, basically, indeterminates will keep growing. They don't have a terminal bud. They just keep extending and do require some trellising, although our indeterminates, none of them are particularly super viney. And in fact, we space our plants really wide apart so we can, but that's because we're doing research on this. I mean, maybe a commercial grower wouldn't do it, but we have enough land that we are 7 feet between rows.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
So the indeterminates we don't do any staking because we don't have the labor for staking. We just don't have. So we'll allow them to kind of crawl along the ground, and in the summer, it basically never rains, so the soil surface is dry,
Mhm.
and we've got plenty of room for them to kind of sprawl out into the rows a little bit. But one like chocolate silk, no, you don't need any trellising for chocolate silk. Now, let's see, I think you said Magic Bullet,
Yep.
and Magic Bullet is an indeterminate. So that one, probably it would be good to at least have a short trellis, maybe 4 feet,
Mhm.
maybe not 7 feet, but it might help it. The thing about the trellising is that gardeners like it because usually they're in a confined space, and it goes vertically, and it makes a lot of sense for someone with limited space to trellis. But you actually don't really need to trellis indeterminates. It's just,
But
yeah. I mean, so let's see, what were the other ones you said? You had,
Pineapple Rose and
yeah,
American Idol.
Pineapple Rose is also a determinate, so that's not an issue either. You don't need to. And what was the fourth one?
American Idol.
Okay, yeah, and that also, American Idol is also determinate. So the only indeterminate in there is the Magic Bullet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then as far as the trellising, there's a lot of debate about whether you should like train it up one cordon straight up the middle and kind of snip off all the sides and all the suckers, or just like put it in a cage and kind of keep it from sprawling. What's
Yeah, I
your
mean, all that thing about pruning it and stuff, that's just making work, frankly. It is. I've done it. I mean, people like it because they think, oh boy, I can really get in there and manipulate, but you're not really helping it. I mean, I haven't seen anyway. I mean, I think it's just kind of a waste of time. So, so yeah, a cage would be good. That's sort of an easy way to contain it. Another way is, like professional growers do what's called either the Florida weave or the San Diego weave, just, a stake every 8 feet or so. And then you run a like baling twine or some kind of a twine between the plants, and one that's maybe a foot off the ground, and then another one that's 2 feet, and another that's 3 feet. And, you just kind of weave through like that. And, that's what I would do. I mean, I haven't trellised a tomato for a long time now, but that's what I've done that though. And in fact, that's what a lot of commercial growers will do. But I've talked to commercial growers, and they say, if we didn't have to stake, it would be really great because it's a lot of labor, and I mean, if you're back east where it rains in the summer, you have a wet soil surface, then probably trellising is more critical because you don't want your fruit sitting in wet ground on the, and getting rotten. But for most of us in California, that's not an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Carrie, who's joining us over here, she's on the East Coast, so she's got rain.
Yeah, she's got rain in it, and the East, it's interesting in the East, things like the pollination situation is a little different because there are certain insects that exist in the East in those warm, a climate that has those warm, humid nights, 70-degree nights that we never get. I mean, it's never above 60 degrees at night. And usually it's below 50, close to it. But in the East Coast, they have a bunch of different insects, and varieties will cross in the East, especially some of the potato leafed heirlooms like brandywine. And if you look, like if you know anything about tomato flowers, the stigma will protrude out of the anther cone. And when it does, in the East, insects can actually move pollen from one variety to another. But for whatever reason, in California, Kanti, my partner in this work, has said he's never seen crossing of tomato varieties. That's why we can grow hundreds of varieties right next to each other and they won't cross.
Oh, I had no idea, because yeah. So you can do that here, but in the East, if you want to save seed from your
In the East, it's a little more, well, you got to look at the flowers, because the anther cone holds the pollen. That's the male part.
Yeah.
And the female, there's an ovary and then a style which carries the pollen down, and then a stigma at the top here. And you can look at the flowers, and some, particularly the heirloom varieties, will have what is it called? An extruded, or it's a stigma that actually rises above the anther cone. You can see it. But here, it's, in California, luckily we don't have to worry about that. If we're in fact saving seed of the different varieties, that's where it comes into play.
Oh, cool. I had no idea.
Yep.
So so Carrie obviously is in the proper East. She's on the East Coast. The rest of us are fully on the West Coast. Where's that line that you don't have to worry about it? Like who?
Oh, I'd say probably the Midwest, where you probably the 98th parallel, which is middle of Kansas. And it's not really too much in the Midwest either. I doubt that it's really more like east of the Mississippi River, and where the climate is clearly a humid one, compared to us out here in the dry West.
Yeah. So I've been asking all the questions. Krista and Carrie, do you guys have questions? I have so many more, but go ahead.
I just have a quick follow-up on what you were just talking about. So if there is cross-pollination, that only affects next year's seed. It doesn't affect this year's fruit.
Correct.
Is that
correct? Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah. And I can tell you a little about how to collect seed too. It's fairly simple. People get all worked up about it and try to make it be a super complicated thing, but it's not. But anyway, we can talk about that if you are into saving seed. And the thing is that one tomato fruit has like a couple hundred seeds. So one fruit could probably, that's all you really need in a lot of cases for your next crop, if you're in fact saving your seed.
Yeah. While we're talking about it, why don't you just give us the rundown? Because I've seen it in both very uncomplicated and very complicated ways for saving your tomato seed. How do you do it?
Right. Well, we actually use a little machine called a millet wheat seed separator, but that's because we do more quantity and we need to we need some mechanical assistance to crush the fruits. But you can do it, with your hands. Just take a few fruit and squish them into like a pail, like we use 5-gallon pails, but maybe you only need like a one quart pail or something, not too much, and squish like a few tomatoes in there. And, and mostly, you can cut the tomato in half and just kind of scoop it out with your hand or maybe a spoon or something, and discard the outer skin and the stuff that doesn't have seed in it. And so then when it's in this little pail, then you just let it sit for about 3 days. And you can stir it every so often. And it's, the temperature, it could be anywhere from like 60 to 90. I mean, at 90, you're going to get really rapid fermentation. I wouldn't recommend, that's a little warm for what I'd really recommend, but we do it it's about 70 degrees and it's fine. And so and you have a stick, you just stir it, and you might want to add a little water too, to kind of give it a little more liquid. I mean, tomatoes have their own liquid, but you might want to add a little bit more liquid, kind of stir it around, and then let it ferment for probably 3 days, 2 to 4 days, something like that. And even longer is okay, but you're going to see like a layer, this white fungus kind of scum on the top. And, maybe once a day, go in there and stir it up. But if you forget, it's not critical, it's just, but that kind of helps kind of mix everything up. And then after 2 or 3 days, then you add more water, get it more liquidy, stir it up a little, let it settle out, and the heavy seed will drop to the bottom of the pail. And light seed that's probably it's less mature, may not germinate, plus, all the additional pulp that was in there, that all floats to the top. So then what you do, you're basically pour it off, you're decanting it. And I would say, you could pour, like have a bigger bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket, you could pour into, and like, maybe you pour, well, you probably don't even need that if you're careful, and you can just pour the scum and the light seed off. You should discard it. You could pour it into your compost pile or whatever. And then you add a little more water and, pour it. So you get most of that out. And then you're going to see that the good seed is at the bottom, it's all kind of cloudy for a while and you can't really see. And you're going, boy, do I have any seed at all? And then finally, when you pour it down to the bottom, you see all that little layer of golden seed at the bottom. And so that's your good seed. And then what we use, we actually use, I don't know if you know what paint, what is it like? They're like little netted bags. I think, you see them, they're like white nylon bags. And we use those so then we pour our seed into these little nylon bags. And, you can, have a hose there and add a little water and it'll go into this bag. You've probably seen them, little produce bags. And what am I trying to think? Not paint stirrer, but paint, they use them to filter paint. But anyway, so your seed's in those bags, and then you just hang it up on, a clothesline or a fence or something, and, kind of break the seed apart, because it's all going to cluster together. All the seed, once it's wet, it all just sort of is this one big ball. So you kind of, with your hands on the outside of the bag, you just kind of rub it like that. Tie the top, just hang it in the sun for, as I said, 3 days, and maybe once a day come and sort of work it so the seed gets singulated, all in clumps. And then you just let it dry, and that's it. I mean, you may have a little bit of tomato skin that's left there, but that's not really going to hurt it. We actually end up fanning it a little when we're selling the tomato seed because people don't want to see that last little bit of tomato skin in there. And that's basically it. But the point is that there's a lot of leeway there in terms of temperatures and the number of days you can ferment. But and you're going to see that it's that white layer on top, and you know that it's fermenting. But I really like those bags because we used to lay stuff out on screens and then, have a fan blowing across it, but then we'd have seed blowing off the fans and varieties would mix. And we're dealing with, dozens of varieties. So each one has to be kept separate. So we just put a label, really important. Put a label in every bag and then, with your seed in there and then just let it dry. And, that's the process, but it doesn't really require, any fancy equipment or anything, just a bucket and one of those netted bags. Oops, I can't.
Sorry, that was just me,
Oh,
not unmuted.
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm gonna try that too. Okay, let's see. Who else had questions? Krista, did you have a question? You haven't had a chance yet.
Not so much a question as just I appreciate kind of the casual nature of approach to tomatoes. I'm a relatively new gardener. I've only been doing it for a few years. And the first year I was just so like, oh, there's a right way to do it, and doing all sorts of research, and you got to do Epsom salt, and you got to do like this and that. And I like that it's like you can also just let it grow. You can also just see what it does. So I appreciate that because there's a lot of just trial and error, and some things work and some things don't. And kind of taking the pressure off and letting the tomato plant kind of do its thing. It's nice.
And really, half of, or even more than that, of the reason you garden is kind of for your emotional well-being and your mental well-being. It's not all about you're trying to be this perfect grower and get all like tense about it. That completely misses the point.
And so is it like that for you still, even though you do this like as your job? Do you still get to kind of relax and do it for the emotional support, or does it get tense?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, it's you do have to, you can't be super casual, like, oh, I'm going to go away for a month and come back and it'll be all good. And although I've done that and it's not all good. So yeah, and the hard thing I think for me is the scaling up beyond just like doing it for yourself versus trying to grow a quantity. And so I'm actually kind of I'm trying to semi-retire a little bit and move a lot of this production stuff to other people who are interested in it. But I still really like the breeding part of it. And, that because that's so much of that is unknown. And that's what really got me excited about this whole tomato project, is that we didn't know what we were going to get. And even though we had some educated guesses, and what we in fact did with this was we grew about 40, originally about 2017 is when we started this project. We had about 20 heirloom varieties and about 20 commercial varieties that we grew out in a field, maybe a half a dozen plants of each. And then we were looking at different plants and saying, well, we want to cross this with this to, with something in mind, like a certain color we wanted, or certain flavors. And so we actually started, we made all the crosses in the field. If you have to know when to actually do it, but you don't need to be in a lab with a white lab coat. You can do it in the field, and even with sort of big clumsy hands or something, you can actually you make the pollen crosses, and then you put a ribbon and a label there to make sure you've you know what your cross is, and then 45 days later, you have a fruit after the original, roughly. And then you save that cross that, so you've made a F1, a first generation hybrid by taking pollen, the male pollen, putting it on the stigma of another variety that you've deemed as your female, and you remove all the other flowers around it, so you've only got that one flower in that one area, and then you put like a brightly colored ribbon and then a label so you know what you've got. And then when you collect that fruit after 45 days, and then you grow it the next year as your first generation, and then you do that again, and you repeat that, continuing to make crosses for new varieties, but then with the ones that you made your first generation cross, you grow that out and save the seed from that. And that's when, just a little breeding lesson, the first generation, the F1, is inherently quite uniform. The plants look very similar, but if you save the seed from that F1 and then grow that out as an F2, suddenly, instead of uniformity, you have incredible diversity. You have all kinds of forms, and that's the real fun part. You start kind of opening this genetic treasure chest, and you start seeing all these different possibilities of varieties, colors, shapes, tastes, and so by the third generation, and then you select the ones that you want to continue. That's the hard part. You get all these different possibilities, and you can, if you don't eliminate most of them, very quickly you're going to be growing 50 acres of tomatoes. It just explodes. So you have to be very hardcore and say, I only want this one, and I only want this. And then you track it to the F3, and by F3, it's still pretty diverse, but starting to come together a little. And by F4, you're actually starting to look at something resembling a new variety. And so by about the 5th or 6th generation, which is a lot of this stuff that we put out there was like 4th and 5th generation. So there's still, off types or different ones in there, but most of it is actually a variety. So anyway, so that's kind of how this, so we were tracking, we keep tracking the favorite ones that we made from F1s, but then each year we make new crosses. So we've kept like the pipeline going. And so as I said, now we have like roughly 35 varieties and probably another 20 or 25 breeding lines that we're continuing. So we could have potentially as many as 50 plus when we're done, varieties when we're done with this, which I was kind of amazed because it's only been 6 years, and seeing some of those results. But I will say that there's still, it's not perfectly uniform and all that, but we really learned a lot of interesting things about this that, it's really a great way to improve varieties. And I'll just tell you one kind of strategy that we used was we took commercial paste tomatoes that they grow in the Central Valley, those rock hard, tasteless things that have yields up to like 70 or 80 tons per acre, and in comparison, an heirloom might have 1 ton per acre, just to give you like kind of the scale. They're ridiculous, the yields on these things, but it's all the tomatoes that go into sauce and all the processing. So Kanti knows the owner. He knew people in the processing business who had all these numbered varieties that no one's ever heard of, and they gave him seed of some of these. And so we've used those as crossing parents. We've used them as a parent line because they they fortunately, in most cases, they weren't deterring like we cross one of those processing ones with an heirloom. And the heirloom flavor came out in a lot of these, but now we had much better yields, much firmer fruit, no blossom end, or well, a little, yeah, mostly no blossom end, right? Very little cat facing and cracks. And that's the thing, is that the problem with heirlooms is that almost all of them have problems with the fruit, like they'll have cracks. And when you have a crack, the minute you pick it, it's great off the vine. You pick it off the vine and eat it, it's delicious. But almost right away, bacteria start compromising the fruit, and they get these off flavors. And so all those heirlooms that have cracks, they just don't have any kind of shelf life at all. And so that was one of the other advantages of including these Roma processing types. We really improved the quality of the fruit, so now they all didn't taste good either, I mean, and when we're doing tasting, what we do is we eat them in the field, no salt or no cilantro, no garlic, no chilies, no mayonnaise, no nothing. I mean, just unadulterated tomatoes. We eat them in the field and then bring some home and sit them on our kitchen counter for 2 weeks, and then eat them, try them again, have another tasting. And that proved, as a good test. The other thing that we did, I did have, while I'm just on the coast this year, when we started this project, and actually for the first 5 years, I had a site in Gilroy. So a much hotter site. And so we had these two really different bioregions growing the same things. And the only ones we really picked were the ones that did well in both locations. So, and the reason for that was that that's a pretty good indicator that it's a more adaptable cultivar. If you can see it, if it succeeds in two quite different environments. And since that time, as I said, we've sent them to the Northeast. A lot of the varieties perform great in the Northeast, even though it's a really different climate than ours. So I was pretty happy to learn that. They don't always work, but I was pretty amazed at how well they did work. And I will say that Kanti, when he started picking stuff, a lot of the varieties originally had disease resistances from a lot of the East Coast diseases too. So we had a little advantage there. And so that's why, another reason maybe why they did so well in the East. But so that's just a little more about the breeding part of it. Yeah.
Oh, Patricia, you got your hand up.
Tricia.
Unmute.
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Okay,
came in late.
great.
I was having audio problems when I came in the first time and had to restart. So I missed some of this, but so how stable do you think like these varieties are going to be for like saving seed and being and breeding true? Are they going to breed fairly true for saving?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that you will see some off types still. I'm admitted, and like each generation gets a little tighter, but what you want to save just the seeds from those plants. You say, oh wow, I like this plant, save the seed from that one. And it should be pretty stable for you.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm in the Southeast, so we have hot, we have humid, we have drought. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they like this.
Yeah, that's the challenge. We actually haven't had any Southeastern growers. So this will be that. I'd love to hear what you come up with.
Okay.
While we've been in the humid climates, it's mostly been north of Virginia. So I'm not gonna say that they're gonna do great in South Carolina or Florida, but
Well, I'm in the Piedmont of North Carolina, so it's a little bit
well,
hotter than Virginia.
that's a little better,
But,
yeah, in
yeah.
terms of, that's probably not that much different from the Northeast, but well, a little hotter though.
It's
Yeah.
it's definitely hotter, and we typically have a couple of week drought in July around here. That's pretty typical. And when it's not in like a little bit of a drought, then it's really hot and humid. I do try to keep them watered when it's during a drought, but still, just the humidity and the extreme heat we'll get up to 100, and the tomatoes don't like it. A lot
No,
of
they
tomatoes
don't.
have
I mean,
disease issues.
they always say hot weather, but they like warm weather.
Yeah,
They like 85 degrees. They don't like 98 or 102.
so yeah, July's hard on the tomatoes around here.
Although
so.
it's remarkable how many tomatoes are grown in the Central Valley of California, which is 100, gets to be 110. So but I think part of that, if you can get it early enough, that's usually August and September that it's really that hot. But yeah, it doesn't always do well. And we're growing them in the exact opposite environment here. We're on the coast where our daytime highs are 68 degrees.
Wow.
And I know, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's insane. I mean, we almost never get above 70, except there might be one heat wave on Labor Day. But it's a incredibly consistent, cool maritime climate. And in fact, I didn't even think tomatoes would grow here. I was very skeptical. And so I put down a cloche, a little hoop house. And when I first were growing them out here on the coast, and I came out the next day, and the hoop house was up in a hillside about a quarter mile away. It just had blown off. And I said, well, I guess I'm not going to grow them under a hoop house. And they did amazingly well. I mean, they're a little slower. I think the yield isn't quite as high. Like the Gilroy site I have is, you guys in California are probably more familiar with that, but it's like a daytime high is 95. Typically, it'll be 100 a few days. Nighttime is cool though. And those 95s and 98s, the thing about that is that only lasts for 2 or 3 hours in like from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And after that, temperatures drop. Central Valley, little different. Central Valley, the heat stays from about 1 in the afternoon till about 8 o'clock at night. So that makes a lot of difference. They might have the same high temperatures, but one environment has them for 1 hour and the other for 6 or 7 hours. And that's a big difference. So that's where you kind of have to pay attention to not just the highs and lows, but sort of that cycle where how much you're actually getting of each, the lows and the highs. So, but I'll be really interested in how North Carolina does.
Well, I hope they do well. I mean, they're started later because I would normally start my tomatoes a little sooner. And so these are started a little later than the other tomatoes. So these are not in the ground yet. They're only, about 6 inches tall or something right now, 6 to 8. So we'll hopefully get them in the ground in the next few weeks, but they'll be going a little later than some of my other tomatoes.
Well, what we're going to do here, and in fact, I was just telling Ann that we were working on it today, is we're laying down drip tape. We drip irrigate everything. Now you can dry farm a little too, and I'll maybe mention that a little too. But what I like to do is lay the drip tape down and then water for a couple of hours. We've got good moisture in our ground already. I mean, because of the winter time, but give it a couple hours of water, just so that the soil is nice and moist all the way through. And so the tomatoes, when you plant them, they're actually in a decent bit of moisture. Don't overwater. I mean, that's a lot of, a lot of gardeners tend to overwater too. So it's because they think if a little water's good, more water's better. And in fact, what happens is you can drown the roots, and that's when you get diseases around your roots because there's no air there. So you got to be cautious of that. But if you can give water early on to the plants, but sort of a little deeper watering and less frequent, force the root to go down. And then you'll have a strong plant when it comes time to starting to put fruit on. But you will, particularly when they're putting on all their fruit, you want to make sure you've got enough water there, because that's when they get stressed and you get blossom end rot. You might be familiar with that.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'm, there's another thing here there's a farming technique called dry farming, which some of you may know what that is. And it's a pretty exciting proposition, because if you don't have to water, that's kind of amazing, except that you got to sort of dampen your enthusiasm a little bit, because the soil has to be kind of a very particular soil that can hold moisture through the winter. And if you're trying to save seed, it may not be the smartest thing, because your seed yields will probably be lower. You might have fine fruit, but it's the seed. If you're actually trying to save a bunch of seed, the dry farming route may not be the way to go. So for us this year, and I've done dry farming here, and Kanti, he was always like on my case about, you're not giving it enough water. And I think I probably wasn't, at least if we were trying to maximize seed production. For fruit, it was fine. But although some of the varieties showed blossom end rot too, so you kind of don't want that either. So
hang on, let me just clarify. So blossom end rot is a symptom of not enough water?
Yeah, I mean, people say calcium, and calcium's involved, but it's really mostly about the plant is not, it really doesn't have enough water, or the watering is very inconsistent. You might get a lot of water and then it dries out too much. But that's when, if your plants are kind of suboptimal water, if the water uptake is down, likely you're going to see blossom end rot.
Well, thank you. Okay, Carrie's got questions. Ask
I
them
have a quick three-parter. So of the lines you've bred, what's your favorite slicer? What's your favorite cherry? And then do you have any special tips for growing the Magic Bullet, which I am really excited about growing this year?
Yeah, Magic Bullet is extraordinary in that it has flavor, very unique flavor, like no other one. So it really, when people see it, taste it, they just go, whoa, what's that one? Because it's, it's just that unique. My favorite slicer, well, actually, American Idol is one of them. I love that variety. And Chocolate Silk actually is another one. I think that's why I recommended those, because American Idol is a nice, good size slicer, at least for California, which California doesn't really get huge tomatoes, not like the East Coast, because our nights are too cold, and it stops growing at night. And but the American Idol is slightly flattened, slightly pleated fruit, nice shape on it, and about the biggest one we grow too. I mean, it might have maybe 10 to 12 ounces. I mean, we really never get like a 1 pound jumbo, or hardly ever. There's one variety we have called Big Mama that actually can produce some 1 pounders. And then Chocolate Silk. Now, American Idol is a red slicer. Chocolate Silk is a chocolate type, which is the red-green combo, which some of those you might be familiar with, like Cherokee Purple, Paul Robeson, Black Krim. I mean, these are heirloom varieties that mostly come out of Russia. I mean, and the Russians kind of dialed in on this kind, and it has that amazing umami flavor, that kind of rich, savory And the other thing about chocolate silk is the texture of it. It's a super smooth texture and really just phenomenal. That's why, hence the name. So we, the favorite cherry, boy, I'm trying to think what I have for that. Yeah, I'm trying to, yeah, looking at these, yeah, what is my favorite one? Probably it's going to be the California Sungold, which is are you all familiar with Sungold? Do you know that tomato? It's a hybrid that bred by a Japanese seed company, and people have tried to copy it by growing out the plants, and saving the seed, but it still gets the same problem that Sungold has, even though it has a phenomenal flavor, and that's cracking. The fruit tends to crack. So, and then many people have tried dehybridizing it, trying to grow the seed from that and select, not with to no avail. Well, what we did, we actually used a variety. It actually has no gel. It was one of Kanti's discoveries in his work. It actually it's almost completely, has no juice at all in it. And it doesn't even have anything around the sacs around the seed. But we crossed it with Sungold, and we got Sungold without cracking. So it's got the same Sungold flavor without cracking. So did we just lose somebody? Up.
Yeah, Krista just put in the chat, she had to run and said, thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Krista. Yeah. But anyway, so yes, that's what I would say. The Cal Sungold, which has got that phenomenal flavor but doesn't happen to crack.
Is that one that you sell?
Yes.
California Sungold?
Yes.
Okay.
California Sungold.
I
Yep.
see that. Okay.
Yeah, I should put in a note here that for the seed club, I had to narrow it down, which was super hard. But yes, Steve has a whole bunch more. Are they just
Yeah.
available on your website directly, or do you have to get them in bulk?
And I don't really have a website. I mean, I had like a little blog for a while. I'm very low key, but you just contact me directly, email me, and I'll make sure you have some. And what I could do, if somebody's interested, I could send you basically our tomato catalog. It's got a picture and a description for each variety. And that's where you can see everything. And
you know what? I've actually got that. Maybe I can just forward it. to
yes,
them.
yeah. Why don't you distribute that out to whomever would like? And but good. Yeah, it just gives a little thumbnail sketch on each variety and a picture, so you can kind of get a better idea.
Yeah, I would love to try that California Sungold. I've got regular Sungold this year. I've got some of those. It would be really nice to be able to to compare those.
Yeah, I could probably, I know it's getting late, but I could probably send you some of those if you could email me and I could send you a pack. Usually my business, mostly what I do is bulk seed with a few companies, but gardeners, I won't turn you down, because I know people really love stuff, and they don't want a huge amount either. But, so maybe I'm looking for someone who would like to do that kind of thing with them, is actually make it be part of a pack business, which I'm not a packeted seed company. And but
that's kind of what I'm starting to do little by little, but I can't carry all the varieties. I kind of want to, but I kind of can't yet.
Yep. I know. And have you talked, Anne, did you talk to any of the other people at the Seed Summit, like Kaylin Redwood? She's one. I just saw Kaylin, in fact, up at her place.
Yeah. No, I think we're going to try and visit her this summer too. Go see.
Oh, okay. But that would be, someone who's got a small pack business that, has done okay with it. And then Brigitte Pena, she wasn't at the meeting, but she started San Diego Seed.
Mhm.
And she doesn't really grow stuff herself, but she does a terrific job of marketing stuff and has done really well. And, she's
Yeah.
another one it'd be good to talk to.
Mhm. Yeah, we used to hang out at the Heirloom Festival back when that was a thing.
Oh,
Do
you know
that?
Brigitte.
Yeah, I know Brigitte from there.
Oh,
From years ago.
okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think she was one of the first people featured in the Seed Club. Like,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
right when I started it, however many years ago.
Great.
Yeah, it's small world,
It is. It is. Well, there's not many of us that are crazy enough to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, in fact, I sent out an email about you and Kanti, saying, like, would you work for 6 years without getting paid? 7 years, like
But
nobody's paying you to do it, right?
no,
Like
nobody's paying us to do it. We
you don't
haven't,
have patents or anything.
no patents. We don't want patents.
Mhm.
It's just, it was stuff kind of to keep us out of trouble, so. No, but I mean, really, it's just sort of been a labor of love, as they say. It's been so gratifying to just see the results. And I'm just not interested in at this point in my life, I'm not interested in starting a seed company, really. So, but we also grow, just for your information, other crops too for seed. Primarily biennials like onions, carrots, and beets. And then broccoli, we do quite a bit of that. And well, beans is mostly just for our own consumption, because that's not really, that's beans is another whole thing. But and then occasionally we'll grow a sweet corn. We have a couple of sweet corns I really like and things. But so we do have several crops that we will grow. And I also grow a few melon and watermelon and some peppers as well, but not too much of those.
I've actually got a handful of your beans in my backpack right now that I'm gonna plant this afternoon. Looking forward to it.
Great.
So this is finally warm enough. It's been so cold here. I mean, I guess, yeah, we're like you. It's just been the coldest spring. I haven't even put beans in yet.
Yeah. Well, and beans, if the soil's cool, no, they don't
Yep.
like it.
Exactly. And it's
Same with
finally,
peppers too. Peppers need it warm.
Mhm.
Watermelon needs it warm. Okra needs it warm.
Mhm.
Tomatoes, more resilient. It's amazing what tomatoes and squash too can do. Most of the squash is fine,
Mhm.
but I also do zucchinis and a kabocha squash too.
Yeah. So, Carrie, do you have more questions, or Patricia? I have so many. I'll just keep going, but I want to make sure that you guys
Yeah.
get your questions answered if you have any.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
I guess the only question, at least right now, my seedlings don't look as great as I'd like for them to, and I'm not for sure exactly why. I am seeing some purple on the leaves, and I know that sometimes that's a sign of a lack of phosphorus, but I've got them in really good potting soil. So I don't know, are these particular seedlings of these tomatoes, should they be showing like some purple veins on the leaves? Is that kind of part of their nature, or do I need to fertilize them more?
Yeah, well, we don't fertilize seedlings at all.
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to remember what the exact mix is. I think there is both coconut and peat in there. I'd like to just eliminate the peat altogether, for its non-renewability factor. But in terms of the purple, yeah, I mean, they say phosphorus perhaps, but I'm not sure really. I mean,
In fact, I had the same question. I don't want to interrupt, but I had some right here that have that same on it. Is this what you're talking about, Patricia?
Yeah,
purple
they're
underside?
especially underneath the leaves. I'm seeing some
Yeah.
purple, and I mean, I do have them under lights. I mean, I still have mine under grow lights where, I'm still at that. They're still inside.
Yeah, I see
And-
some of that. I don't think it's, a critical thing. I mean, I often when tomatoes are a little too long in the flats, I see them get more purpley.
Okay,
You know, and I think that's root bound. They're a little bit root bound then.
okay, maybe I
But
didn't.
fortunately, tomatoes, unlike some other plants, they kind of bounce back if you get them in a good soil. You know,
Okay.
they're perennial by nature in the wild, so they kind of, you know, they can kind of work through some of these problems. Like, as opposed to something like broccoli, for example, which if it goes down or if it's really hurting it, it's hard to bring it back. You
Mhm.
know, it's very annual in nature, and you really don't want to stress it. Yeah, tomatoes can handle some stress, you know, so another great thing about tomatoes.
So can I actually ask a question about the seedlings and the stress? So these are the same, planted on the same day, right? I've got some that are looking like tall and skinny. And then some that look like they're sort of more relaxed and open to the sun, you know? So these guys look to me kind of stressed. Is this because they just are getting root bound and need
A
to get?
little bit, maybe. They don't look terrible though. I mean, but they
Yeah.
do, you know, it looks like they might be a little root bound.
Because that's what happens when they kind of start growing straight up like that.
Yeah, when the leaves kind of go up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what that means, is root bound?
I've seen that. Yeah. When, you know, when like we'll plant a bunch and then, you know, we usually have extras in the flats.
Uh-huh.
Those extra ones that, you know, they're hanging around in there for another couple of weeks and they start doing that
Okay,
upright stuff. Yeah.
that's good to know, because I
Yeah.
get that every once in a while, and
Yeah.
okay, so
But as I said, if you can get them into a decent soil before they really are suffering, you know, I mean, you know, don't let them get too stressed, but they should come back.
Yeah, no, and it's been on my list. I've just, everybody else.
You know,
has
and
other things on
tomatoes
their
they don't really need like super fertile. I mean, just average. I think average, you know, garden soil would be okay for them.
Now, do you fertilize your tomatoes in the field? And
No.
if so, how often and with what? No fertilizer.
The thing I do is, well, I always grow cover crops in the wintertime. A mix usually of fava beans, peas, vetch, and oats. And then like this year I grew several kinds of annual clovers in one section. And because I usually have a nice cover crop in that I turn under, and I really, as I was saying earlier, I have very wide spaces between my rows. I'm planting them 7 feet apart because I actually have the luxury of more land than I can farm. So I'm not looking to kind of maximize my production per unit area. So I'm basically, so every plant is allowed to exploit a larger area. So I feel the fertilizer isn't really needed. I mean, maybe if I saw some particular problem associated with lack of fertility, then I would change my mind on it. But the soil I'm in, it's a silt loam, and they call it somewhat poorly drained, which is why dry farming works. It's an alluvial soil, you know, from creeks and rivers, and it's got a high clay content. So there's a pretty good amount of fertility already in there. I think if you're in a sandier piece of ground, you might want to be fertilizing, or at least getting some good high quality compost on there. I mean, I've put compost on before. I actually ordered some compost one year from down the road, and they came with some big trucks and drove across my field and made like 12-inch grooves in my field. And I said, you know, I took 1 step forward and 2 back on this deal. I don't want these big trucks in my field. And so far, you know, stuff seems to be, you know, without the fertilizer. I mean, I'm not using anything other than the cover crops. I'm pretty religious about the cover crops, making sure that, you know, I've got full cover from November to April. Although as it really, the reality is that November and December, there's not much growth. And really most of the cover crop grows in March, that just explodes. But as long as you can have a little bit of a cover to keep it, kind of keep your soil in place and keep, the roots active down there, and then there's like a 6-week period where the cover crop just explodes. But that's what I use that's my fertilizer.
And then with your cover crop, you said you turn it under, so you go through over with a tractor and just kind of mix it in, or do you just cut
Yeah,
it down
well,
as a
we've
mulch?
been using, we have a farmer here that's got a disc, and we just pay him to run the disc across. Usually like 2 passes, and then we allow like 2 or 3 weeks for that to break down. And now we're going through it with a BCS, which is sort of a beefed up rototiller, just to kind of break up those clods that the disc leaves and kind of flatten it a little, and maybe then we come back through and till like the top inch or 2, maybe 2 inches. And that's it. And then we're ready to plant. Well, today what we're doing is we're laying the drip line down, and then we run like a furrower right along the drip line. So we have a little trench like this, and then we'll water for a couple of hours. And then, maybe Friday, if all goes well, if I can fix my break today, then we start planting.
And how big are the seedlings when you put them in? Oh, that big. So itty bitty.
Itty bitty.
Yeah. So like these guys, I could.
Yes, like that. Exactly. Like that.
Well,
That's
all right.
about the size. Yep.
Or maybe I'll just go out and plant these today then. So looks like they want to get out.
Yeah, I would soon get them out because I mean, I've seen people grow these gigantic tomato plants, but that's frankly silly to do it. I mean, unless you can't plant, unless you're talking about an indoor plant, but people let them get way too big. I mean, it's, and they start putting seed in like February, which is again way too early. I guess everybody gets eager, wanting to get their plants in, but you don't need, the seed we started mid-March, so they're 8 weeks old now.
Mhm.
And that's a little, I mean, we'll plant them typically at 6 or 7 weeks, but because of the spring, we are just so wet. But I think we're still okay.
Mhm.
8 weeks. Yeah. Carol.
So I started mine 6 weeks out from last frost here, which is May 7th.
I mean, 6 weeks before May 7th.
Right.
Yeah, so
And-
March 20th something. Yeah.
Huge. They're huge. And they were last year too, although last year I did 8 weeks. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be smarter this year. I'm going to do 6 weeks. I still have 2-foot plants. I don't know how yours are 6 weeks old and they're only this big. What am I doing wrong that I end up with
Well, we're in these little 1 inch by 1 inch cells. The trays we have hold 338 cells, 13 deep by 26 long. And no fertilizer. It's a soilless medium. And they get, I mean, at this greenhouse, I think they've got robots going down and just sprinkling it. I mean, it's, they've really got it down to a science, and just giving it a little bit of water. But now, how big are your pots? Are you what kind of a tray are you putting them in?
Well, I started them in Ann's 12 packs, and then potted them up to 4-inch pots, and then potted them up to 6-inch pots, and then potted them up to like 7-inch pots that were 7 inches deep. And like I said, they're at least 2 feet tall. They're all on the ground now, but, and I buried them really deeply, but yeah, taking care of
way bigger than you need. And you don't need all that potting up. It's not, I mean, peppers, yes, peppers require, a bunch of potting up. because they grow very slowly and, you know, they need lots of weeks. I mean, a pepper plant, you know, I like to see, you know, 12 weeks. I mean, and they really need to be a good sized plant when you put them in the ground. Tomatoes do not. They do not need to be so big. Now, because and you must have, what kind of a medium are you planting them in?
I bought some of Anne's dirt. So
Joanne, is it magic dirt? I mean,
Magic. No, it's cocoa coir. It's basically a cocoa coir based potting mix with a very light amount of fertilizer in it. And it's mostly like, rock phosphate. I can go look at the list of ingredients, but it's mostly just a very fine textured pressed cocoa coir with a little bit of goodness in it, but not very much.
Uh-huh. And is that what you're using right there, those plants that you showed me?
No, these I potted them. I started it in that mix, and this is actually a richer potting soil. That's like a blend of perlite, cocoa coir, and compost, like
Okay.
1 to 1 to 1.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. When I pot up, I've been potting up into Coast of Maine, a mix of their raised bed mix, their potting mix, and their lobster compost. So they're definitely getting a lot of
They're getting
nutrients.
they're getting a lot of juice, which is why they're so big. We kind of starve ours a little bit. But as I said, we rely on, you know, I mean, and when we put them in the ground for about 2 weeks, they just sit there. They don't do anything. Then all of a sudden they get green. They sort of like, you know, kind of get locked in.
Mhm.
And then they start growing rapidly. But it takes a couple of weeks after you're putting them in to actually get going, because it's kind of, they go through that transplant shock a little, or but it's good that you bury yours. I mean, you want to bury them, you know, because you don't want a huge floppy plant above ground. So but I just think that, gosh, you're potting up way more times than you need to. I mean, I know that maybe you like doing that, and I'm not going to discourage you from doing it. Yeah.
No, I'd love to pluck them right out of Anne's pots and pop them in the ground if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's what I'm going to do too, because I was looking at yours, Carrie, and thinking I'm just going to take these guys and then transplant them to 4-inchers, but it's actually finally getting warm for the first time.
Yeah,
so
no reason to.
just plunk
no
them straight in
reason.
like that. All right, I'll do it.
Yeah. And as I said, they won't do anything for a little while. You know,
Yeah, they'll just be
oh
like,
my God, what's going on? And then all of a sudden you're going to see one day they're just going to look vibrant,
mhm,
hopefully. But
hopefully.
that's, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, and the American Idols are already doing that. Those ones seem to be more vigorous to me. Are they more vigorous as a plant?
It's one of the, yeah, I mean, they're all pretty good, but yeah, that is a good one. I mean,
Yeah.
it is one of the better ones. Yep.
It's
for-
just like the stem is thicker, the leaves are bigger. It's just
Yep,
like,
yep.
go, go, go.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that one produces, it's like about the largest tomatoes. I mean, they're nice, big, lovely tomatoes on that one.
I
you know.
can't even wait. It's only May.
Yeah.
And yeah, we don't get our first tomatoes around here until like August anyway, but
I know. It's always, unless, well, you said about your potting up. Now, if you wanted to get July tomatoes,
mhm.
that's, I think, what you're doing. You know, if you could do that potting up a little bit.
Mm.
Definitely have tomatoes in July. So that probably is at least partly the result of
Yeah.
putting the bigger plants in the ground. But I had to snip a lot of, actually, what's your thought about when you plant them so small, but I had to take buds, flowers off of a lot of the plants because they were already starting to fruit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you've got that, you definitely. I mean, if you've got a lot of fruit already when it's little, that's what you don't want that.
Yeah, no,
You know,
They're
but they're big. They're big. But
they're really, if I was on my phone, I would share a picture with you. They're huge.
yeah.
I
So
tend to I tend to pull my buds off if they've only been in the ground for like a week or two, because I feel like they need to get their roots established. Now, I don't know if that's wrong or not, but
No,
I had
that's,
to do that with
that's,
some of mine
yeah, no,
recently.
that's probably a right thing to do. Yep. Yep. So, but I know when I see tomatoes that are like, they're little tiny plants and they've started getting fruit on them already, that's a stressed plant.
Mhm.
Because it's like, they say, well, we got to reproduce now. I mean, that's the bottom line is, oh, look at that. There she
It's
goes.
beautiful.
So that's, and
Yeah.
you can, that's a 6-inch pot that it's next to. So you can see how big they are.
Wow.
Yeah.
You are going to have July
Cherokee-
tomatoes.
Like this is my arm. I don't know if you can.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, it's huge.
That's
Yeah, and
impressive. Lots of
started-
leaves too.
Okay.
I
I'm
mean,
not going to
mine
tell you,
almost
I'm not going to
durian.
tell you to do different. That's great.
This is actually, this is a magic bullet right here.
Wow,
Uh-huh.
she's got a magic bullet
Pretty
that big
little
already.
flowers on it.
It's looking
And
good. Looking good.
that-
Yep.
So assuming that my labels aren't messed up, because I need a better labeling system. I didn't do well with the, this is a nebula.
Oh, yeah. That's one
Uh,
from one of your competitions, Steve.
Oh,
Who's that?
I thought-
Let's see. Nebula comes from, I think it might be Frank Morton.
Oh yeah, Frank's not competition. He's
No, I know.
he's a friend of
No.
mine. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's the joke. But
Yeah.
I think it's Frank. I should look it up. It's somewhere, it's Oregon for sure.
Okay. Or Siskiyou seeds? Is it Siskiyou
I don't think
seed?
it is Siskiyou. I think it is. I think it's Wild Garden.
Okay.
But yeah, it's another one bred for cool nights, which is one of the reasons that and it just seems super tough. Growing
Right. All of these, yeah, all of these experience cold nights too. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they should be well adapted to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
it's-
exactly.
I mean, Patricia, that's not really a concern of yours, but for the rest of us here, cold nights is part of the deal.
Yeah, our nights don't cool off very much once we
Yeah,
get
no,
into the
you have
summer.
that warm, that's why you get jumbo tomatoes there too.
Yeah.
We can't grow tomatoes like North Carolina tomatoes.
Yeah.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know.
But at least you probably don't suffer from the diseases that we do as well.
Exactly. Yeah, we have
It's-
I mean, there's fusarium and verticillium, but those are like all of our varieties are resistant to those. And nematodes, which is another one we don't see.
Yeah.
The
that's a
only
problem.
thing we really get at all is early blight. You know, which is some of and that being on the coast here, we get have a bunch of that, you know, foggy and stuff. But other than that, yeah, we don't get, you get some of those nasty like yellows and
You just, yeah,
it's
I just
scary. North
go in and they
Carolina-
just suddenly they're dead. You know, it's like just suddenly they're giving up, and it's like, okay. I think most everybody here by August, you're kind of like, if you've still got tomatoes going, you're very thankful if your tomatoes are still healthy. You know, towards the end of August, they struggle through, like I said, late July and August, which is why we try to get them bigger and out earlier, you know, so that we can try to get tomatoes in before it gets rough.
Could you do like a late planting, like say plant now?
Well,
and
I'm
then-
gonna be planting some now because I haven't put out.
Yeah,
all
I
the
mean,
pre-club yet.
stuff that won't come on till late August or even September. And I know
Yeah.
it's still hot weather then,
Right.
but the days are shorter. You only
Yeah.
have 12-hour days instead of 14-hour days. So that makes a difference.
Right.
And so,
I have had some in the past that I've actually had in a pot that I got out late, and I actually still had tomatoes in November in a
Mhm.
pot, just
Right.
because we'll have usually a frost towards the end of August or October, but if I can protect them, then usually we're good almost till Thanksgiving. So it's like if you can, so they can keep going, you know, depending on the weather. It's always unpredictable.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely. So it looks like we have someone new join us. Is that Rachel? Is there someone there who wants to ask a question? I see someone there, but you're muted.
I see
and,
the-
you know.
just to let you know, I see that it's after 2. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
we should
need to
probably go,
pretty
actually.
soon because I've got
You got to go fix a,
stuff to fix.
Yeah, no, get it. You get it. Thank you so much for your time, Steve. You got to go fix
you so
that and
much.
get your tomatoes
But,
in.
but I enjoyed all your questions and all you tomato enthusiasts. It's fantastic. And
Yeah, absolutely.
love to hear your feedback and, negative as well, give it to me. I'm okay. I can handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll send out the PDF that you sent me that has all of the varieties, so you guys can.
Yeah, and if you want to just email me and say, oh, I want this, I'll make sure you get some seed.
Oh,
Perfect.
well, thank
Yeah.
you. That's so sweet.
Yeah,
Well, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
thank you, Steve, for letting us see
Great.
so much of your world.
You bet. And
Alrighty.
thanks for setting this up, Ann. And we'll be in touch because you're not too far away. So
Yeah, I might even be coming out there and looking at those tomatoes in Pescadero.
yeah, we're gonna have. I'm probably gonna have like a Saturday field day. Like I was looking at the calendar. I think September 30th.
Oh,
which is
cool.
like the last day of September, I
Mhm.
think is a Saturday.
And come look at some tomatoes.
Yeah, and that's about our peak. Actually, the last 2 weeks of September is like, that's when everything's really rocking.
Yeah, me too.
So anyway, I'll keep you posted on that. And
Awesome. And I'll let everybody on my list know too. Well,
great. But before I official, that's kind of the date I'm looking at. I haven't firmed it up totally, but I think that's when I'll do it. So.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for coming. And thanks for everybody who's on the recording and seeing us later. I'll stop recording now. And yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay.